Roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
He's here.
He's out.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Here. Out in the lobby.
Hey, if they're not here, they absent.
They absent.
Yeah.
Carter,
And he's
you're
not here. I mean, he's not here.
Here. Thank you. Item number 3, presentation of a retirement certificate to Ms. Karen Terrio, Accounting Support Technician of the Calcasieu Parish WIOA program in recognition of 36-plus years of dedicated service to the citizens of Calcasieu Parish. Ms. Stephanie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a certificate here for Karen Terrio. I've worked with Karen for a long time. We've had many good days, some not so good days. But we really appreciated all the hard work that she did. You couldn't have asked for a better person to work with, a better person who's so very organized. Anytime I would ask her for a document, she could go right to it, and I wouldn't have to wait for it. So we're going to miss her, but I do have some words for her. Certificate of Appreciation presented by the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury on the 29th day of June 2017 to Karen Terrio, Accounting Support Technician, WIOA program, in recognition and appreciation of 36-plus years of service to the citizens of Calcasieu Parish. Congratulations and best wishes on your retirement.
No name.
Put on them cheap clothes.
Looks good in cheap clothes.
He does look good in cheap clothes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody?
Congratulations, Ms. Karen, and enjoy your retirement. Okay, item number 4, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an amendment to the professional engineering contract between the police jury and C.H. Fenstermaker and Associates for the Ham Reed Road Extension Project.
Move on, number 4.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Brame, second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Mr. Landry?
Yeah, comment. On item 4 and item 9, they both refer to revising the payment terms. What are the current payment terms and what are we changing them to?
Mr. Landry, I'll respond to item 4 here, and I'm sure it might apply to item number 9, but what's happening is on the Hamry Road extension, because there are some components of that, as far as the complexity of them, we required the engineer provide some additional alignments. There were some different design alternatives that were required because of conflicts with utilities, pipelines, transmission poles, and then also
We're more interested in the terms. Just the
well,
payment.
the terms are basically to provide some additional funds to cover those additional costs on an hourly type basis. So it's more has to do with the monetary compensation for the additional work.
Not the amount of days before they're paid.
No, this has to do with an engineering contract.
Okay. Well, in my world, whenever we talk about payment terms,
Oh, no.
that's when you're going to be paid and what length of time. And so whenever I see something that says we're changing the payment terms, to me, that means you're gonna get paid quicker, or now if we're stretching it out, I'm good.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna get paid quicker, no, I wouldn't be for that. Unless we got a discount, of course.
That's not what it's
Early
about.
pay discount. In fact, have you tried that? We pay them early, maybe get another 2% or 5% off?
I don't think our finance department
It-
would,
It doesn't work like that in engineering? Well, it should. I mean, if you pay them early, you ought to get a discount. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Okay, any objections? Motion carries. Item number 5, consideration of
Move on
making a
5.
recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving a temporary servitude agreement for the Jim Kent Road Bridge Replacement Project. Got a motion by Mr. Anderpont, a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Item number 6, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution
Move on
approving
6.
an active sale agreement for the Nursery Street Bridge Replacement Project. Got a motion by Mr. Anderpont, a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 7, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active donation agreement for the Shadows of at Bayou Oaks Sewer Plant Site. I got a motion by Mr. Brame, second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Item number 8, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active sale agreement for the Old Spanish Trail Road Improvement
Move
Project.
on item 8.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. McMillan, second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 9, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to
on
adopting a
item 9.
resolution approving an amendment to the professional services consulting agreement contract between the police jury and CSRS for the Old Spanish Trail KCS Overpass Project. I got a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item number 10, consideration of making a recommendation
Move on item 10.
with reference
Second.
to authorizing the parish engineer to advertise for Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-08, Coach Williams Drive, extension from Old Spanish Trail to Houston River Road. Got a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott.
Mr. Barris.
Mr. McMillan.
So nobody misinterprets what we're doing, if I could go to Mr. Connors and have him explain why this is on the agenda.
Well, this is just in preparation to go out for bids, and we wanted to be ready to do that because we know that, in the very short term here, that we would hope to be able to go out to do that, but while we're trying to wrap up a few loose ends, so we don't want to have all that come together and then have to go to the jury to get permission. We want to go ahead and be set and ready to go.
And I can't tell this jury how excited I am to get to this point. I'll be ready when they get the plans out and the shovels in the ground, but having this passed tonight will help us to be ready. I think we've got a couple of right-of-ways and maybe just a little more on a core engineer permit, and then we'll be ready to go with that project, and we're looking forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Item 11, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution accepting Senator J. Bennett Johnson's Avenue Drainage Improvements Project as
Second.
substantially complete. Got a motion by Mr. Landry, second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Any other matters for consideration?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Nice. Call to order the Agenda Committee for Thursday, June 29th, 2017. The purpose of today's agenda committee meeting is formulate an agenda for the regular meeting of the police jury on July 6, 2017. I need a motion and a second to pull item 21. We have a motion by Mr. Brame, second by Mr. Landry. Pull item 21. Scoot on down to 21. Yeah, I know. Item 21, take appropriate action on the terms of the following members of various boards districts. Item A, Mr. Lawrence Huffpower,
Like to
Ward
move
2
to
Fire
appoint Mr.
Protection
Blaine
District Number 1.
Second.
We have a motion to appoint Mr. Blaine Harrington by Mr. Latour, second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion on this item? Objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. B, Workforce Development Board. We have several members, and we will take them, I guess, one by one. Ms. Tamika Simeon,
I'd like to move to reappoint Ms. Tamika Simeon.
Second.
we have a motion by Mr. Latour, second by Ms. Mayo, to reappoint Ms. Simeon. Any objection to that? Hearing none, that motion carries. That item carries. Mr. Darrell Hennigan,
I'd like to move to appoint Mr. Paschal Malone.
motion by Mr. Latour to appoint Mr. Malone, second by Ms. Mayo.
Correction.
Any objection to that item? Hearing none, that passes. Mr. Toby Leger,
That's no nomination right now, so we move to defer for 30 days.
I have a motion and a second to defer for 30 days on that item. Mr. Carlos Perez,
Move to appoint Mr. Steve Gaspard.
motion by Mr. Latour to appoint Mr. Gaspard, second by Ms. Mayo. Any objection to this item? Hearing none, that one passes. Ms. Karen Clapp,
I'd like to move to appoint Mr. Toby Leger.
Second.
motion by Mr. Latour to appoint Mr. Leger, second by Ms. Mayo. Any objection? Mr.
I'm not objecting. Where's he from?
I wish I could tell you that, but I'm not sure, sir.
Toby. Well, how did we come up with his name?
It was on there by, I'm sure, appointed by the Workforce Commission, who they wanted to accept for that, and we just agreed with them.
Anybody in staff can answer that item?
He's working on it.
Where did,
He's, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Andrew Pont. Oh, yeah, okay. Lake Charles, short answer, but it's, you might have some better detail as to the.
He actually lives in
If-
DeQuincy right now.
uh,
His
state
business,
state your name and position for the record, please.
Stephanie Simeon, Workforce Development Board Director.
Thank you.
Mr. Toby Leger was appointed as our board member by the Jeff Davis Chamber because of his previous business. He no longer works for that business, and so he is currently living in DeQuincy, and we're wanting him to be in the position that Ms. Karen Clapp was in, but he does live in DeQuincy now.
Okay, because I noticed that he left one that has no nominations, and that's because of his change of address?
Correct.
Okay. He was just removed 2 items before that, so he's just moving to a different appointment?
Yes, but he's in a different position in his job.
Okay. Does that satisfy your question?
Yes and no. I'll yield for the time being.
Any further discussion on this item?
No,
Scott?
okay, so Ms. Clapp's resigned. This has nothing to do with Go Group stuff, right? I mean, or is this,
No, you're correct.
okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Thank you for clearing that, Dennis.
Any other discussion on this item? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. Moving on to item C, Ms. Linda Dugas, Community Center and Playground District Number 3 of Ward 7.
Move to reappoint Ms. Linda Dugas.
Motion by Mr. Bears to reappoint Ms. Dugas, second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion on this item? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item D, Mr. Dwight
I'd
Primo,
like to move to reappoint Mr.
Community
Dwight
Center
Primo.
Playground
Second.
District Number 7 of Ward 2. We have a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint,
Yes, sir.
second by
Who's second down here?
Mr. Barris.
Mr. Barris. Discussion.
I mean, you don't.
Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item E, Mr. Mike Atwell, Community Center and Playground
Move to
District Number
reappoint
7,
Mr.
Ward
Mike
2.
Atwell.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint Mr. Atwell, second by Ms. Mayo. Any objection to this item? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item F, Mr. Tony O'Banion, Community Center and Playground District Number 5
Move to
of Ward
reappoint.
5. Motion by Mr. Landry to reappoint Mr. O'Banion, second by Mr. Guillory. Discussion. Objection. Hearing none, that motion carries. Item G, Mr. Mike West, Community Center and
reappoint.
Playground District Number 5 of Ward 5. Motion by Mr. Landry to reappoint Mr. West, second by Mr. Guillory. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item H, Mr. Matt Sonia,
Move to
Community
defer
Center
for
and
30
Playground
days.
District Number 4
Second.
of Ward 1. Motion by Mr. White to defer for 30 days, second by Mr. Latour. Discussion, objection. Hearing none, the motion carries. Item I, Mr. Joe D. Gentry Jr.,
Move to reappoint Mr. Joe
Community
D.
Center
Gentry
Playground
Jr.
District Number 1 of
Second.
Ward 1, number 4 of Ward 1. Motion by Mr. White to reappoint,
Second, Mr. Landry.
second by Mr. Landry. Discussion. Any objection? Motion carries. Item J, Ms. Julia L. Page,
Move to
Community Center and
reappoint.
Playground District
Second.
Number 1 of Ward 6. Motion by Mr. Landry to reappoint, second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item K, Mr. Monique Lynn Deal,
Move to reappoint.
Community Center Playground District Number 1 of Ward 6. Motion
Second.
by Mr. Landry to reappoint, second by Mr. Barris. Any objection to that item? Hearing none, motion carries. Item L, Mr. Scott Spell, Community Center and Playground District Number 3
Move to
of
reappoint
Ward
Mr.
7.
Scott Spell.
Motion by Mr. Barris to reappoint,
Second.
second by Mr. Brain. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Item M, Mr. J. Ellender, Community Center and Playground District
Move to
Number 2
appoint
of Ward
Mrs.
4.
Tina Brown.
Motion by Mr. Barris to appoint Ms. Tina Brown, seconded by
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Matt Vincent, Community Center and
Move to
Playground
appoint
District
Mr. David Kupion.
Second.
Number 2 of Ward 4. We have a motion by Mr. Anderpont to appoint Mr. David Cuvion, second by Mr. Barris. Any objection to this item? Hearing none, motion carries. Item O, Ms. Sally Finette,
Move to
Recreation
reappoint
District
Ms. Sally
Number 1 of
Finette.
Ward 3. We have a motion by Mr. Brame to reappoint Ms. Finette, second by Mr. Guillory. Discussion on this item. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Item P,
Move to
Mr.
reappoint Mr. Gary
James
Gobert.
Gary Gobert, Waterworks District Number 12 of Ward 3. We have a motion by Mr. Scott to reappoint, second by Mr. Guillory. Any objection to this item? Hearing none, motion carries. Item Q,
Move to reappoint.
Mr. James
Second.
Jimmy Moe, Burton Coliseum Advisory Council. Motion by President Guidry to reappoint, second by Mr. Latour.
Not a bad guy.
Discussion. Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item R,
Move to
Bridget
reappoint.
Martin,
Second.
Burton Coliseum Advisory Council. We have a motion by
That too. I missed it totally.
Mr. White,
Dr. Mackey.
second by Dr. Mackey. Discussion on this item. Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item S, Mr. Braylon L. Harris, Burton Coliseum Advisory Council.
Move to reappoint.
Motion by President Guidry to reappoint, second by Mr. Latour. Discussion. Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item T, Mr.
Move to
Dale
appoint Mr. Aaron Natale.
Bernard,
Second.
Burton Coliseum Advisory Council. I have a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint, to appoint Mr. Aaron Natale,
That came from the school.
seconded by Mr. White. Any objection to this item? Hearing none, motion carries. Item U, Mr. Mark LeBlanc, Burton Coliseum Advisory Council.
Move to appoint Mr. Mark.
Second.
LeBlanc.
We had a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint Mr. LeBlanc, seconded by Dr. Mackey. Discussion. Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item D, Mr. Mark Peterson, Burton Advisory
Move to
Council.
appoint Mr.
Second.
Mark Peterson.
We have a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint, second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion on this item? Objection. Hearing none, motion carries. Item W, Mr. Dalton.
to
Langford,
reappoint
West
Mr.
Calgary
Langford.
Airport Authority. We have a motion by Mr. Anderpont to reappoint, second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion on this item? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are done.